You ever watch an animated movie and just your jaw drops, right? You're thinking, how in the world did they do that? It seriously feels like magic. But it's not. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain and break down the whole thing. We're going to give you the step-by-step map to get from a single idea all the way to the final film.
I mean, this is the big one for any creator, right? You're staring at a blank page, a blank screen, and you're supposed to turn that into a story that lives and breathes. It can feel totally impossible. But here's the thing, there's a method to the madness. And in this explainer, we're handing you the playbook.
Okay, so where do we even begin? Well, before you draw a single thing, you gotta have an idea. So this first part is all about tackling that first, and honestly, biggest hurdle, conquering the blank canvas. It's usually the toughest part of the whole process.
All right, here's a strategy that's going to sound, well, totally backwards at first. It's called the restriction method. The idea is to limit yourself, to actually become more creative. I know, it sounds wrong, but trust me, it's this incredibly powerful tool for coming up with amazing ideas, especially when you're feeling totally stuck.
Just think about it like this. If I say to you, hey, draw a tree, you might just kind of freeze up. The options are endless, right? But what if I said, draw a tree, but you can only use triangles? See, your brain immediately kicks into gear. It starts problem solving, trying to figure out how to make that work. That's what creativity is all about, finding these really cool solutions inside a box of rules.
Let's make this real. Look at how it was used for the short film Lift Up. The creator laid out these specific rules. Just 2 characters, 1 single location. It had to be funny, and it had to be under a minute. But here's the killer rule, the most important one. The characters had to be a simple ball and a simple cube. Now, this was genius. It did 2 things at once. First, it was a really fun, creative puzzle to solve. And second, it made the super technical 3D modeling work so much simpler.
Okay, so you've used those restrictions, and boom, you've got your core idea. What's next? Well, now we move into what's called pre-production. This is the all-important planning stage. It's where you draw up the blueprint that's going to guide the entire rest of the project.
Pre-production, yeah, it can sound pretty intimidating, but really it boils down to 3 key steps. First up is the script. You gotta get that story down in words. Then, from that script, you build your storyboard. Just picture a comic book version of your movie. And finally, you make the animatic. This is basically a moving, animated version of your storyboard, and it's where you figure out the exact timing and pace of the film. Okay, listen up, because this is probably the single most important tip for saving time and money in this whole thing. The animatic, that's your point of no return. Seriously. Changing the story at this stage? Easy. Trying to change the story after you've sunk hundreds of hours into 3D animation? It's an absolute nightmare. So you have to get it right here. Lock it down. All right, our blueprint is locked and loaded. Now we head into the production phase. This is the exciting part, where all those plans on paper start becoming a real, moving 3D world. Hey, remember that restriction we talked about? A simple ball and a cube? Well, check out the payoff. This is a real quote from someone who saw the film. It just goes to show you, by stripping the characters down to their absolute basic shapes, the animator was forced to get really, really good at using movement and timing to show emotion. And boy, did it work. So the 3D process, that has its own little workflow too. It kicks off with modeling. That's exactly what it sounds like. You're building the characters and the sets and the software. Next up is rigging. This is super cool. It's like putting a digital skeleton inside your model so you can actually pose it and make it move. And then there's pre-visualization, or previs for short. Think of it as a really basic 3D version of your animatic, and you use it to nail down your final camera angles and where the characters are going to be. So here's a little dose of reality of what animating is actually like. It is so meticulous. I mean, animators are working shot by shot. They can spend weeks on just a couple of seconds of the final film. It's not one big race. It's a marathon made up of hundreds and hundreds of tiny little sprints. So at this stage, the animation is basically done. All the movement is there, but the film doesn't look finished yet. Not even close. For that, we've got to go into post-production. This is all about the final polish, the stuff that gives the film that professional, glossy shine. I find this time breakdown absolutely fascinating. It really shows you where the work is. Just look at that huge chunk for animation, 41% of the entire project. And what's really surprising, to me at least, is that lighting and rendering took up another 20%. That's almost twice as much time as it took to actually build the characters in the first place.
And these finishing touches, this is what makes it feel like a movie. You've got texturing, lighting, and rendering. That's what creates the final look and feel of every surface and every scene. Then there's editing, where you stitch all the final shots together. And of course, sound design, which is huge. That's where you build the entire audio world with sound effects, music, and all that atmospheric sound. We are so close. The film is built, it looks great, it sounds great, but it needs a name. This is the last creative hurdle to jump over. And hey, just like coming up with the original idea, we can use a structured system to figure it out. So instead of just waiting for lightning to strike, the creator used a method. He just made these simple lists based on the movie's core parts. Stuff about the cube, stuff about the ball, and words about how they move. You can see right here how that organizes everything. It's basically the restriction method all over again, but this time for words. And Lift Up was the obvious winner. Why? Because it works on two different levels. On the one hand, yeah, it physically describes the action of lifting the ball. But more importantly, it gets to the emotional core of the story, how these characters lift each other up. It's simple, it's memorable, and it's just packed with meaning.
And there you have it. That's the whole journey, all the way from page to screen. It all kicked off with one simple idea that came from a restriction. That idea turned into a blueprint. That blueprint was built into a 3D world, and that world got polished and shined up into the final film, Lift Up.
So we've walked through the entire process, right? From that scary blank page all the way to a finished movie. And it proves that animation isn't some secret magic. It's a process. It's a map that you can actually follow. So the question is, now that you have the map, what story are you gonna tell?